Hi guys, this is Lucky Luke for Poker VIP. This will be the third installment of the my Hot 75 review. I don't think we necessarily will actually get to the end on this third installment looking at how much there has been to say about some other particular spots. I do want to make sure we address everything decently well as we go through. So we're going to take our time, which I think is generally a good approach to review. And I imagine we'll get through the whole thing probably more likely in 4 installments rather than 3. Okay. I believe actually just at the end of the last review, my replayer was flipping me back a couple of hands on the very last one. I think we stepped back about an orbit for that very last Queen Jack off hand. Didn't affect the analysis though, but we'll keep an eye out in case any more of that from this replay. Should be all in exact chronological order. So we'll see how quickly we can flick through some of these spots and pick out the ones that really deserve some attention. I think that's a very easy fold, for example, with the King 7 suited. So I hope it's pretty obvious why this is a shove and nothing else. I mean, perhaps if we did have a huge monster and we thought these guys were really bad players, we might even induce this shallow because, they're just bad enough not to realise that we should be strong when we're doing that. But these guys should all be good enough to, for it to look wider when we shove than anything else. So I'm going to obviously do that in the case of a kind of medium strength hand like this. And against good players, we'll do it with our strongest stuff as well. Okay, let's move along. So we do lose that one and get knocked down in stack a little bit. This one I do choose not to open. This would be too wide from my opinion. Don't really like stealing from hijack +1 with kind of trashy hands. Yeah, so I think that's a clear fold for me. We open the suited ace, early position, and we do get shoved on. Now, I do think it's fine to open these kind of hands this shallow. Again, unless the table's been frantically active. There are tables where you would just fold pre. I think this one's been relatively quiet. I think we are basically folding to a shove from anyone though. If someone had perhaps 8 or 9 blinds, we'd probably be raise calling versus them, but as it is, it's just a bet fold. And we make a disciplined fold versus the shove from Alea. So, what else have we got going on? We've got the ace jack off in the small blind. Ah yes, a very important spot this one I think. Of course this guy looks like he's shoving the universe when he puts 113k in, but we have to look at effective stacks, we know that. So he's 17 effective versus the biggest other stack on the table, 16 to 17 big blinds effective versus these guys, but he does have only 10 to 12 effective versus several other stacks, so the average is a little smaller than that. So he should be shoving a range the equivalent to what you'd shove when you're about 15 effective. He's under the gun +2 because he's 1 seat round and there's also a person missing from the table. So if he was under the gun, I think this would be closer. This is the bottom of my range for stacking off versus him here. I'd probably go with 8s plus as well, and yeah, I think it's relatively close. So it's pleasing to hit that turn card and secure our winning. I think in this case it's not totally a coincidence that it was actually close with his actual hand and close with his range. But so here is an example of a hand where we are getting ridiculous odds to call. We're getting 12.46 to 1 because we only have to call just over 1,000 chips into a pot of around 12,500. So we only need to win the hand 7% of the time to break even on our investment. It's just a very simple, very good example of how pot odds actually works. Okay, so yeah, I mean it's obviously a no-brainer with any 2 cards. But it's also a no-brainer with any 2 cards when we're getting as low odds as usually as 2.5 to 1 or greater, because most hands will have that much equity. Okay, so again, something we'll look at in more depth in a single class, I think, but certainly easy call in this case. Now this spot is just on the side of a fold, very close. I think if we look at the Nash charts, we'll see, let's just double check that, so it's cut off 13 effective, it's queen 10 off, yeah. So this is plus EV just, against perfect calling ranges. Now, good players will tend to call close enough to perfect, or at least, they may call a little too wide in some cases, but the bad players will tend to fold too much. So we can't really go any wider than GTO, I think, in this case. Okay, let's move on, see what else we can dig out. I think this is going to be an easy fold. I'll try to flick through the snap folds quite quickly and power through these blind levels. You can see they're going up pretty fast now. Yeah, I think that's a very standard fold with our stack. And I thought this one was kind of interesting actually because of the positions. I did wonder about this one in game. I think I definitely reshove with most pairs here. I was a little on the cautious side, I think, with threes. So we can figure this one out. I mean, if I'm in the big blind, I'm calling all day, so I suspect that this should be a call. I perhaps leaned on the conservative side because this guy's been kind of on the tight side, and we have a lot of stats to say that he's fairly tight. But still, I mean, he's in the hijack. Yeah, I think we should devote a quick review to this one. So he's in the hijack with just 11 blinds. He can tighten up a touch because a couple of us have got him decently covered, but he should be on something like this range. So let's plug this in and then perhaps just shave a little bit off it. Let's see what we've got. 28, roughly 28%. We'll just adjust this to the actual range given here. So King 7 suited, King 10 off, Queen 9 suited, Queen Jack off. We've got the Jack 8 suited, the Jack 10 off, and the 10-8 suited, 9-7 suited, 8-7 suited. Okay, so if we give this is an equity shoving range, and then if we just perhaps just take the very bottom of that off, just to be a little on the conservative side, not very much, shouldn't be too much tighter than this really, I think. So let's see how we do versus that range directly. Got 45%. Yeah, okay, that's interesting really, isn't it? Because as we can see here, because of this, if we assume that these guys fold all the time, which of course they don't, then we don't treat them as dead money. But hypothetically speaking, if they were all in or something, or if they were sitting out, then we would have 45%. We would need 45% on a call to break even here. Okay, so because of the dead money in there. So it's interesting to note that against that shoving range, we actually have 45.8%, so we have a hair's breadth, but not really enough to be comfortable calling it off, especially when we do take these two guys into account. Okay, when we take them into account, we have to deduct at least a couple of percent from our overall equity to account for the times when they wake up with a monster. And it's going to be difficult if we reshove here with threes. Of course, it's going to be difficult for them to call it off, even with something perhaps as strong as a mid-pocket pair. But they're still, they're going to get in their top of their range, and quite correctly so, and that range is going to crush us. And the few times when they do have one of those starting hands, it's going to lose us some equity, which means that actually we can fold this spot, yeah. And I was wondering where the line would be. I mean, in game, I think I probably would have reshoved with the fives and folded the fours, and that does give us a healthy 4.5%. equity on the spot when we disregard the players behind, and I think still probably at a pinch a couple of percent plus EV on a reshove when we do take them into account. So yeah, I think I was more or less on the mark with that one in game actually, which I'm pleased about. I'm never going to be sure about that kind of thing until you do run it through with a bit of mathematical analysis. So, but as you can see, it was quite a straightforward case really when we just kind of run it through. Right, so we are sitting on, again, a relatively healthy stack right now of 23 blinds. That blind's leaping up, of course, so we're knocked immediately down to 17. So you can see, you can't really wait around in these kind of formats. So here's a spot I would actually like to have a quick look at, although I think it's fine to fold here because there's so many short stacks, so many people are going to get it in, and we just can't really call off against any of them. If there was someone, a couple of players on slightly shorter stacks of 7-8 blinds, we might be able to do that. But I just want to look at why as also as an example of how to do quick pot odds and calculations. Okay, so let's just do a hypothetical very quickly here where Sten S. Jolin reshoves on us, where we do open and he reshoves on us. How do we calculate the equity we need to call and which hands we should be calling in with? Okay, so first of all we do the quick bit of math. So we're putting in 12,000. There is 6,000 in antes and 9,000 in blinds. Okay, so that's 15. 15 add 12 is 27. So there's 27k in there. Then he shoves his 62. And that's what we stand to win if we call him off and we do win the pot. Okay, so that's his 62,000 shove plus the 27 in the middle. Okay, so we stand to win 89k when we call him off and win the pot. Okay, and when we call him off and lose the pot, we stand to lose 62k because that's the amount we have left to call. We don't count when it's already gone in, of course. Okay, so we have a ratio then, very simple ratio, I just wrote this up earlier, of 62 to 89. Now the reason that we can just solve this for how often we need to call him to break even very easily is that we just need to do a quick division where we do 62 divided by the total of these two numbers, okay, which is actually 151. So 62 divided by 151 is 41%. We need to be correct. We need to have the winning hand 41% of the time when we call him in order to break even on the call. Okay. Now, just to illustrate how straightforward that is, if we have a proposition where when we win 50%, when we lose 50%. In the when we win 50,000 chips. When we lose 50,000 chips rather. Then we need to win 50% of the time to break even, and 50 divided by 100 is 50% of the time to break even. Right? So we do how often do we win divided by the total of the two numbers. Sorry, how much do we win divided by the total of how much we win and lose in both scenarios, the total kind of set of possibilities. And we see that we need to win 50% of the time to break even on this financial proposition. But we, as you can now see, we only need to win 41% of the time to break even on this financial proposition. Okay, 41% of the time 41% of the time we win 89,000. 59% of the time we lose 62,000, and that brings us to zero. It's a break-even proposition in that instance. Okay, and just to show that we probably don't have the odds. I mean, he's not going to perceive himself as having that much fold equity versus under the gun, so he should be pretty tight. Maybe something like this, maybe even tighter, but maybe something like this, and that would have versus Jack 10 suited. Jack 10 suited with that range has 35% equity, and we see how far do we have to widen him in his range before. Yeah, that's quite a lot wider there, and we still don't quite have enough equity. Okay, so he really has to be rejamming pretty wide for us to even break even on that proposition. Okay, just a quick example of how to calculate that and how to think about estimating ranges with regard to this particular spot. Okay, let's move along. So it looks like a hand we're going to fold. Yep, and another. We'll just dash through these, and again I don't see a defend here with an offsuit hand, offsuit gapped connector. with this shallow. I might defend it if it was suited though. And we move tables again. Looks like we're getting perhaps a touch short-handed at this stage. And we are down to about 15 bigs once again. And we move tables again, so people must be flying out of the game at this point. It is kind of getting down to the wire a little bit. So we wind up with king, queen off, and we're very pleased to have a bit of fold equity in our stack here. I'm not so comfortable here if we've got 10 bigs or something, but with 14 it's a very easy rejam. Well, we have probably slightly under 14 actually, don't we? We have 13, just about 13. So yeah, we should certainly have some. I think this is a very standard spot, very standard example. We're going to have some fold equity. We're also going to have plenty of showdown value, although we'll probably be behind the range that he calls us off with. But the fold equity should make up for that, as long as he's opening at all kind of normal frequencies. He's not a fish. So he does call us off, and we do get there, presumably versus a better hand. Yeah. Okay, it's going to be a substantial proportion of the value of playing that hand, obviously. Okay. So we get a nice double up when we need it. We're up to 32 bigs. And I believe, let's see, here we have the, yeah, so we've got the chip lead for the table. We're a little short-handed, so there should be a bit more action. Again, just opening the pocket pairs. Here's a nice example of an easy call. We're getting 2.2 to 1, so we need 31%. Okay, 31% equity is not really that much. We've got pocket fours, and our opponent has 7 blinds, so they really should be going reasonably. Maybe not with all of this, but I mean, they can go very wide here, but let's just put them on a tight range, just for the sake of argument. Okay, let's just put them on something like this. I think they're certainly getting in all of this, and we've got 46% versus that range. And then, even if we take out everything that isn't, just too tempting to just get it in with. I mean, he should always shove these anyway, but even if we took them out, we're still fine. We've still got loads and loads of space, and we would have with most, most semi-decent hands, much weaker than pocket fours. Okay, so we call him off. We hit, we hit our set, which is always nice, and he does have a pretty big hand actually for considering his stack. So a bit of a cooler, reverse cooler there. We hit our pocket aces. Now, yeah, I was wondering if I took this line. I do wonder about this. We do have a bit of a read on this guy that he doesn't really love to fold to 3-bets, but any 3-bet here is going to be a shove. It's going to be his tournament life, and yes, we're in good position for him not to believe us that much and for him to call us off fairly wide. So I think a lot of people would argue here just for a jam. I just feel that we're so strong and we can get it in so much more easily post-flop on a lot of flops versus a weaker range, that we're still going to stack him a lot post-flop, and we're going to get one of these guys reshoving over our call quite a lot pre-flop and get even more value, perhaps value from 2 players. So I think this can be argued 2 ways, but in this particular spot I decided to slow play it. So he raises, and we have to bump it at this point, because even though we're protecting the against the flush, we've got the ace of clubs. It's just a bit too uncomfortably wet for us to continue to slow play. So it's unfortunate. This is one of the cases we don't stack him, and we don't get to see what his hand was, whether we would have stacked him pre if we had gone all in pre. Okay, so it's certainly a hand with options to it, that one, I think. when it works and you get that value from the 3 players, or you get your value post flop and they turn over something they would definitely fold it to a shove, it always kind of looks like a great play. But when you lose value, it doesn't. I mean, you have to weigh these things up. I think, yeah, I think in this spot with 20 life on the line, it may be justifiable, but I certainly know people who would argue against it as well. Okay, so moving on, we'll just do a few more hands in this session. Skip through the trash, see what we can find. Okay, very standard opened, taking it down, pre with the ace jack off, and lots of rags to fold away. Seem to have missed some blinds in the replay there, but I assume must have been moved again. Now here, I do think we should open here. I think this is a mistake. These guys have all been tight, and we can just stack off versus Tech ID. This is just so shallow. So yeah, I do think this is very easy open. I wonder if this was even a misclick in game. We've got a very easy open here, of course, and an easy fold. Absolutely no way we're good against reshoving range for a 17 big blind stack player there. Let's just try to find one more talking point on today's review. Getting a walk's not much of one. Okay. The blinds seem to skip us again. Perhaps someone got knocked out in the intervening hand sitting next to us. Folding the rags, trying to just pick up good spots. And basically keeping our heads down. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that in these kind of games when you have to, do that. You can't play every spot. You can't intervene when you've got rags and people are picking up hands and getting aggressive. You just have to duck and weave, change gears when necessary. Okay, so I think this will be the last one we look at today. So Matsson's shoves his basically 10 big blind stack, 9.5 big blind stack, and we call him off with a weak ace. I think this is very standard. Just going to demonstrate why again with the help of these simple ranges here. So what have we got? He's in the cutoff with 10, so he should be shoving something like this. We'll adjust to his profile as well, and to the stacks. So let's see, two of the 3 of us cover him. I cover him substantially, so he can tighten up a bit because of that. His profile is kind of standard, taggy looking stats over a small sample, so we shouldn't really tweak it much for that. I suppose we could say he's more likely to be on the looser side. Okay, so plug that into Stove. You do have to do a lot of stoving in review of turbos. It's quite important to, just to demonstrate the spots you're talking about clearly. Okay, 30, let's give him the 35, 36% or so range. Just add stuff in, all the aces. It's just kind of matching with the push fold here. King 9 off, Queen 8 suited, Queen 10 off, Jack 7 suited, Jack 10 off, 10 7 suited, 10 9 off, 9 6 suited, and 8 6 suited, 7 6 suited, 5 6 suited, 6 5 suited rather. So again, just because people cover him a bit, let's just take the absolute bottom. We can't really take much out. Let's take out something like that, maybe even that. I don't think we're going to see someone shoving much tighter than this from the cutoff. Okay, let's just be a little conservative. Give him 34%, so 35.7. And we need to put our own hand in, of course, the ace6 off. And Stove will kindly tell us the odds we need to break even, so we need 42% to make this break-even proposition, we have 46%. Okay, so you know it's not not the easiest spot in the world, but it's still a call. We have that 4% equity on the call. See how we do with ace-2 off. Much closer. Probably still a very marginal call, but you can see, you know, that it does drop off fairly quickly, and ace-3 off is certainly an easier one with a 2.3% equity edge on what we need. Okay, so we just may as well look at the result. So he turns up with a perfectly good shoving hand, and we hold up versus it. Okay, so we'll leave this off here, guys. We've progressed on to blinds of 10,000, 20,000. Certainly approaching the end game here. These will quite rapidly progress up to the I think 150k that they actually wrap up on the heads up. So let's see if we can get that covered in the next class. All right. Good luck at the tables in the meantime, and I'll see you again soon.